We are live. Good morning, everybody. Hello, Dan. Hello, Michael Boosley. And welcome to Friday, April 26th, and our little chat about real estate and all things real estate in the Calgary spring market.
Yeah. How you doing, Michael?
I am pretty great. A little tired. We had dinner for my wife's 40th birthday last night, and it wasn't like a late one, but just by the time we got home and then to bed, just tired. I'm just tired, but great otherwise. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm good. It's spring is here, although it's apparently it was raining and then now it's snowing a little bit, which is typical Calgary weather. I'm doing well. I don't know. I got some showings right after this live stream, which is gonna be great, and it's just a good day.
Right.
Yeah. Great. I want to kick this off today a little bit with a quick market update. Just looking at some stats. I'm gonna try to present my screen here if I can. Oh, this is always a little dicey. Daily housing summary. I like to look at the daily housing summary because it's pretty quick and easy to decipher what's going on. One number I just want to draw your attention to here on the right-hand side. This is detached homes in Calgary through the month of April. Total sales on detached homes is up 3.85%. So it's up. It's not a huge number. Just looking at this year, 1,079 compared to 1,039. Far down from 2 years ago, 28% down. What's really interesting, though, is if we look at the apartment sector really quickly, 20% more units selling this month compared to April last year. So I think I'm seeing that. Last year there wasn't a ton of apartments moving, and this year there does seem to be, and I don't know how many times we've said a flight to affordability on this broadcast, but it's definitely happening. Sorry, I'll just stop sharing that.
I think it's interesting to note there that just the days on market for an apartment. I think 2 years ago it said it was 38 days, so like a month and a half, and now it's inching down to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think the velocity of those transactions in that market in general has really picked up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, when sales are up 20% and days on market is down 50%, like that's interesting. It's interesting. Those are the kind of numbers we were seeing in the detached sector 2 years ago. So
yeah.
Anyways, so real quick market update. We'll put a pin in that and move on to something a little more maybe exciting. And
sure.
I'll say one more thing about numbers. I had the opportunity to present the Calgary Real Estate Board financials yesterday at our AGM, and it was just numbers. It was like a number salad. And I talked to some people afterwards, and they said, "Well, you did about as good a job as you could presenting financials because it's the most boring thing on the planet." So, okay.
Yeah, I watched. I'll say it was dry material.
Yeah.
So given what you were expected to deliver.
I was going to take a straw poll actually and say, anybody actually want to hear this? I'll just say numbers good. That's it. Numbers were good.
Yeah. Just do a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah. So anyways,
good job, Dan, by the way. We appreciate your involvement. For anyone who doesn't know, Dan's been board of director for the last 2 years there. 3 years.
I'm in my fourth year right now.
Oh my God, fourth. Okay.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time, and sometimes it's a thankless job. But we appreciate your involvement. You throwing your hat in the ring.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it is. It can be fun. So,
yeah. It also seems like it can be thankless and frustrating. As an outsider looking in, just as a bit of a commentary on the way I perceive some of the sentiment around it.
Yeah. What, Dan, I got to ask you, and I don't mean to dwell on this. What motivated you to put your hat in the ring and become a board of director?
It was actually it's kind of been a long road of volunteering with the Calgary Real Estate Board. I started in 2012, I think, volunteering with some kind of technology committee.
Yeah.
That moved into a standing committee, that moved into being the chair of that committee, and then moving over to the governance side and sort of, I don't know, moving through the ranks, so to speak. And I had sat on a number of committees, and I think somebody at the board suggested that I should be putting my name forward. So I considered it, and I did. And this was months before we moved over and kind of brought Real Broker to Canada, which, the timing wasn't maybe ideal.
Not ideal for you, probably.
Yeah. but yeah, it's been good. And yeah, the director thing, you see a lot of stuff just through a different lens, which is really interesting. So
yeah,
good, cool. Mike,
maybe to sort of parlay the discussion about the market and apartments into our next topic. Our group has been on both the receiving and delivering side of a number of competing offers. And we were going to try to present today if you were walking through a home as a buyer, what sort of things you might look at if you know that the house is a popular house, that you're in an open house with 30 other people, and you're expecting that they're going to get offers and they're going to have a couple. How do you either walk through the house and understand it well enough that you're maybe comfortable to write an offer without a property inspection condition, or if you have to write that offer with a condition on it, how do you frame that condition, or how do you build up the rest of the offer so that you're still successful if you have one or more conditions attached to your offer? So maybe Dan, when you're walking through a house, is there anything specific you're looking for in terms of the physical condition of the house that might say, with a savvy enough buyer, we're happy to write a unconditional offer on this particular property?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, before you walk in the house, the age of it, when it was constructed, right? And so if it's 1910, there's certain issues you're going to be on the lookout for: foundation issues, crumbling concrete foundation, knob and tube, maybe vermiculite, things that are of that era. If it's a 2017 build, there's very few things in a home like that are like structural, really kind of big issues. You're not looking out for poly B, you're not looking out for aluminum wiring. I mean, maybe you keep an eye out for it, but it's just, if it was built with permits in 2017, very little, aside from maybe potential water damage, bad roof, so there are some things, and you really have to take into context the style of home, where it is. If it's a townhouse versus a detached house, what's your responsibility, what's not, what do you have to be concerned about in a property inspection, or are you better off paying attention to condo documents? There's a lot of things, a lot of different angles you can look at when you're going through and trying to pinpoint what's a concern here and what might need further investigation.
Mm-hmm. Michael, anything you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, well, if it relates to not only condos, but like detached homes, if the era of home, like Dan, the first thing you talked about was like kind of like the year of the build, so if it's like a 1942 home, you're still going to have like some pretty significant concerns on like, is the foundation good, things like this. When you get into the 50s and 60s, you still have those issues, but I believe that like the building codes of Canada like really started getting shaped in, I believe, the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And where, well, all of a sudden the build quality took a pretty big step up, from the foundation. I mean, obviously so much starts from the foundation, but then also, how the actual house is built. And so it's interesting to see through my time working with buyers that quite often the bungalows from the 1950s, 60s, and maybe early 70s sometimes hold up better than the builds in the late 70s, from the houses from the late 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s in some cases. Obviously, I'm not touching on all the things, but because those bungalows from the 60s, 70s, they may still have aluminum wiring and things like this, but they wouldn't have poly B. There may be asbestos in those builds. Later builds might not have it. So there's a whole bunch of different things that kind of come into play. And so it's on a case-by-case basis. You do have to evaluate what the subject property is, where it's located. If it's like in a low-lying area that's prone to bad sewer system and backups or flooding from overland flooding or whatever, there's a whole variety of things, I guess.
Yeah,
what about you, Mike?
What's that?
For me, one of the things I like to do that I know we've all been sort of schooled on is people often walk into the house and get focused on some of the details inside the house. But one of the first things that we like to do, I mean, you have your shoes on anyways, you might as well walk around the outside of the property and have a look at, like, what's the grading look like? Does the grading slope towards the house, and is that possibly a problem, or does it look like it should be dry? And that, again, speaks to the foundation issues you were talking about there, Michael. Look at the windows, have a look up on the roof, see if the roof is in reasonable condition, if the windows are relatively new, if they're like newer vinyl windows, or what the approximate age and or condition of them is.
Yeah.
How well is the yard maintained? And then I think going inside, certainly looking for all those things as well, but I tend to focus on sort of cleanliness as well. I think that a lot of the times something small, like even just, I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but when the top edge of a light switch is really dirty, that to me is something, like, it just screams to me this house was not like really meticulously cared for. If you can see that everywhere is clean, even that little ledge on the top edge of a switch,
yeah,
that to me is a good sign. And maybe that's being super picky and not important, but when I see really dirty switches,
yeah,
I just think, this was either a rental or not really looked after.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point, Michael.
I just cleaned mine on the weekend.
There you go.
Clean my switches.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Michael, you mentioned the sewer thing, and I've got a deal right now where we have to tackle some sewer issues where there's kind of a disconnect somewhere in the sewer. We did a sewer scope, and how do you resolve that? And that's not something that the sewer is probably the one thing that's really difficult to predict, because it's you can only see what's above ground, and there's I don't know, 80 feet of other sewer below ground that you can't see, and it's a really tricky one to try and predict how it's the condition of it.
Yeah.
So
well, and one of our trusted inspectors, Tempest Inspections, and they wouldn't be the only ones, but specifically they can provide sewer scope inspections, which is fantastic. And so in the odd case that we've wanted to have one, or our clients have wanted to have them, he's Dave from Tempest has been great to provide that. I agree with you, Michael. Like, coming back to kind of things, signals in the house that kind of give you a bit of a red flag, are a red flag to other ones that come to mind. If you look under the sinks and you see water damage, like in the cabinet, and things like this, like that just is apparent that it was a kind of an ongoing, recurring thing. To me, it's a really bad sign that they have just sort of allowed things to kind of not be dealt with. It's kind of same thing with looking at baseboards or the light switches, and having that dirt or grime. I agree with you. It's a good little signal.
So
So
I guess taking it to the next step, then, if you've gone through a property, you think that this is a good house, it's a good opportunity for whatever reason, but I don't fully understand the scope of the work that might be involved here. It's still a popular house. How do you, Dan, I'll ask you, how do you structure an offer that might still include a condition, be it a property inspection condition or financing or whatever? How do you go into that knowing that there will be other offers and that you might still be successful?
yeah, I stress this all the time is number one, communication. You got to be in contact with the listing agent. And so knowing how many offers there are, if it's a home that's got some obvious concerns, then, that's something to consider. It might not be a situation where there is an unconditional offer. So that's something to consider. Just being in contact, you might even ask the agent, listen, do you have any unconditional offers? There's no obligation for them to disclose that, but sometimes if you've got a good relationship, they might indicate that there are some pretty stiff cash offers or whatever. And so first of all, gathering information through communication, that's step one. Step two is understanding that there's probably a dollar amount that might offset a condition, right?
Mm.
Let's just pick an imaginary number. If a house was listed for 500,000 and there's going to be an unconditional offer for 500,000, how much more than 500,000 do you have to offer for a seller to say, listen, I'm going to take the risk on this buyer who's doing a home inspection, that everything's good, and maybe the seller's got confidence in their home. Maybe the dirty light switches are just dirty light switches and there's nothing more to find. So they might take the chance to say, well, for 510, for 520, for 525, I'll take that risk that this deal is conditional and might not come together. So it's that's kind of, I think, where the conversation starts. And buyers, I think, have to be somewhat understanding that there is this trade-off. It's risk mitigation. So
yeah.
And and maybe the buyers have to understand that they might have to pay for that opportunity.
Yeah. I think it's important to note that you're right. Depending on a number of factors, like, the price point of the home, what the conditions or what the issues might be, how many other offers are there, because that's also something that's going to dictate potentially how much over the asking price you should go. But that number, whatever number it is that's going to offset the presence of that condition, is always going to be variable, and you have to use your gut to figure out how much that's going to be, what's going to be sufficient and or compelling.
Yeah.
So then you've written the offer, you have a condition or two on it. Maybe I'll just mention one of the other things you can do if you have a condition like a property inspection condition is you can modify. I mean, it's not conditions themselves aren't standard either. So you can modify the amount of time that you give yourself to satisfy that condition. If it's going to be, you can maybe, as you said, if you have a good relationship with an inspector, say, hey, Joe Inspector, have you got availability tomorrow to do a property inspection? And then only give yourself a 3-day window maybe to satisfy that condition. Say, listen, we have a condition, but we're going to get it dealt with right now. We have a pre-approval. The mortgage broker already has the paperwork for this particular one. Like, she's, on the email thread here. We're going to move through these conditions as quickly as humanly possible. And yes, there's uncertainty, but we're going to get that uncertainty dealt with in 4 days.
Yeah.
So that's one way I think that I would handle it. Michael, is there anything else that you would do?
No, I agree. I mean, it just sort of taking off and building on what you just said. Quite often I will, especially in a really busy market when like even home inspectors are hard to sort of schedule, I guess. I will reach out to our, kind of like our preferred home inspectors. And when I say preferred, it's not like, oh yeah, like we're working like, in tandem with them, like colluding with them. Just literally just reliable home inspectors that will give an objective opinion, but we will check in with their availability. And if they've got a slot, in 2 days, I mean, like I'll actually want to know their availability before I even set the conditions date, so that I can have that as tight as possible. It's not like, the inspection is 7 days away and conditions are waived, the next day, because that really doesn't leave you with a lot of even like remedying any problems or deciding. Like, you just want to have it quick, and plus that offer may not even be accepted if it's like 8 to 10 days away in this market, right? So yeah.
And Michael, to build on what you're saying too, I've had situations where I go in with an offer and say the inspection is scheduled for 2 days from now at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that there's certainty that we're not just starting the process. In fact, in other cases, and sometimes we see this on listings where a listing will hit the market. I viewed one this morning, for example, hit the market yesterday, offers Sunday at 6 p.m. So you've got 3 days. So maybe you can, in fact, pre-schedule an inspection. Schedule a pre-inspection. Have the inspector come out on Saturday with the permission of the seller, inspect the home. And, if it's going to cost you $500 to save $10,000 on an offer, perhaps, maybe that's a risk that, the 500 is a sure thing. The 10,000 is a maybe. So rough numbers. That's not the situation I had in the fall where the buyers said, listen, if we can get an inspection done this week before offers are reviewed, then, we'd have some comfort going unconditional. Or maybe just a financing condition or what have you. So there's opportunities out there for astute agents to really kind of, work hard for their clients and give them the best opportunity they can. All this stuff does come down to the buyer's decision. That's got to be said, that the buyers have to agree to the home inspections and be comfortable doing all this stuff.
But I think, Dan, like, what your point is that like, we're not here to, like, there's many little measures that we can take apart from putting pressure on our buyers to write an unconditional offer. Because that the notion of writing an unconditional offer, especially on a house that is going to be the family home of our clients or whatever, it's really important that we are not pushing them to write that unconditional offer if they're not comfortable with it. And so just that there's small and larger levers that we can take. One, the largest one being, essentially kind of like adjusting that price. Like, what is the cost of not having an unconditional offer? Okay, is it 20,000? Is it 15,000? What is that sort of threshold? That's kind of like the sledgehammer, perhaps. And there's a whole bunch of smaller levers that we can pull that ideally we're pulling all the time. So
that's great. I think that's a really good discussion, and certainly one we try to have with our buyers when we're going through. On the flip side, and maybe this is something we can do in our next session, is from the seller's perspective, and evaluating those offers and saying, at the end of the day, this one has no offer or conditions, this one has conditions, this one has a mixture of the two. What's the strongest offer, and what else maybe have we done as the seller's agent to really sniff out what the best option is for the seller? Because if you have 3, 5, 9 offers, sometimes it can be pretty overwhelming and difficult to discern which the best option is, really. So anyways, I think that's maybe a topic for next week, but I think good discussion there, guys, on how to handle adding conditions in a competitive market. Good stuff. I think the other thing we wanted to just touch on briefly, and not necessarily weigh in on, but I think everyone has probably at least heard about, if not been watching the public hearing about the blanket rezoning of Calgary. And everyone has their own opinion here, I think, on right, wrong, or yes, no, or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But I think that what's interesting is the amount of engagement that the process has gotten. I was actually just trying to pull up the number of panels that they're up to now.
I think they're at 180.
180 panels. I think each one of those panels has 4 or 5 people on it.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, Michael, you and I were talking about this earlier. I think the secondary suite issue, 10 years ago got some attention, but nothing like this at all. Yeah. And people are obviously engaged for a number of reasons, but
yeah,
it's good to see pretty healthy debate around it. And I've seen some good arguments, from, I think, generally more for the upzoning, although not necessarily the way they're proposing it. But I've heard some good arguments from no, don't do this, that have made me rethink how I believe that the yes vote should go. Yeah. And I think that there has also been some good, thoughtful commentary from the yes blanket rezoning that have maybe made some of the people that have said no, absolutely not, go, well, I mean, maybe in that case. So I think that just the healthy debate has been really interesting in the process that their city's undertaking to get real public engagement has been interesting too.
Yeah. Like I from my standpoint, we've got like a lot, the entire spectrum of ages speaking, at the hearing, which is, it's fantastic. It's a whole range of stakeholders, homeowners, not homeowners, students, every sort of bit of the spectrum. And I think, we can be negative about politics, city council. But, when you sit there and you watch a little bit of the hearing or whatever, first of all, the public, the citizens that are participating, they're doing a phenomenal job. That's part of democracy. And the city councilors are, for the most part, I would say, patiently listening. I'm not there, so perhaps they have moments where they're not, but it is a long drawn out process. And I think it's good to see. It's a healthy democracy to see, regardless of kind of where you fall on the spectrum of actually where your opinion is on the actual outcome.
Yeah, I agree with both. The discourse is good to see. The engagement, this is, I can't remember another topic receiving this kind of public hearing or debate at city council, which is great. I think the only hope that I have is that, from what I've seen, there are some councillors on both sides of this debate that are pretty entrenched and don't seem interested in listening.
Yeah.
And so I hope that the discourse isn't just lost, and we can spend a week and a half at city council and everything's just the same as it was before. So I hope that people are listening there too.
Yeah, and I can't, I think it's important that we just mentioned that one of our colleagues and kind of patriarchs was one guy along with Stephen Shawcross. So San Ostanti, on our team and kind of the leader here, in a sense. Worked with Stephen Shawcross to write a paper that position paper on it, and I thought it was a thoughtful piece. And then on the flip side, my 18-year-old son Gianluca, who's a student at the Urban Planning and Architecture School at the U of C, he's also planning on speaking on panel, I think 178. I think. No, maybe not 178. It's like 138. That's right. Anyways, and he's actually kind of on the opposite side of the issue, and I'm very proud of him for actually getting engaged and putting his hand up to say something. So, it makes me feel good. Anyways.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. No, it's the discussion is good for the city, and we'll wait and see what the outcome is here in the next week or so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys.
We're at about 30 minutes. I think probably wrap it up. But just heading into the weekend, any Michael, any fun plans or special things you're taking on personally or work-wise?
Yeah. Hosting a birthday party tonight at our house, which would be great. So a bit of family coming over. And then tomorrow we're going skiing, actually. Maybe, I don't want to say one of the last times, but maybe the second last time that we go. We have passes at Sunshine, so we're going to take the kids there. I think it's snowed there, I believe. Sunday, I'm doing something else. I'm not sure, but anyways, how about you, Dan or Mike?
Yeah, it's for me just a little bit of preparation for taking possession of a property on Tuesday. So just getting prepared for that. It's about an hour and a half out of town, and I want to make sure the first visit is productive. So yeah, just preparations.
Yeah, good.
Preparing the way.
Right on. For me, part of the my wife's celebrations included actually she's going to be taking off for the weekend for Saturday night. So I'm gonna have my hands full with the kids, but gonna go do a little try rugby thing with the boys and see if they're interested at all in one of my factions. Maybe they're not, maybe they are. We'll see. Actually, Michael, just a funny note on what you said there about the second last trip. I had some friends that loved skiing, and at the end of every day, when we were on our last run, they refused to ever call it their last run. It was always their second last run.
Yeah.
With the expectation that they were always going to go out again.
Yeah.
So it was never ever their last run.
Yeah. I think it's a good policy to have because it always seems like the injury always happens on your last run.
It's looming. Yeah, it's always there. So it's always your second last run.
That's right.
Doesn't matter what time of the day it is. It's your second last run.
That's right. That's good. Yeah. I'll have to keep that in mind. No, it should be fun. We love getting out. We got out maybe, I don't know. I think I got out about 9 times this year, which is the most I've gone, which is really nice.
Great. Okay.
Well, these my once.
All right, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Busy weekend ahead, and see you all soon.
All right.
Sounds good.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
See everyone.